It's Lindley Oz, and have I got a program for you today? You better tune in and listen. This is very important information. Brought to you by prophecy experts and scholars Jeffrey Nyquist, Douglas Woodward, and Benjamin Baruch. You are going to be amazed at the information they're going to share with you in this half-hour-long interview. I hope that you will all share this message. It is literally amazing what is shared and what they discuss. I was blown away as I listened to them all three speak. So listen, things are just coming to a head prophetically, and I'm going to be shocked if something doesn't happen either by the end of this year or next year. Like I said, I'm going to literally be shocked. Wait till you hear what these guys have to say. They are prophecy experts, as I mentioned. They have numerous books they have published, many bestsellers, and there's a reason for that. That's because what they know about and what they speak to people is right on target. So listen and be blessed. First, a short word from one of my sponsors who helped make it possible for me to continuously bring you the truth. God bless you. With all the events taking place in the news each and every day, there's never been more of a concern as there is now about the economy crashing or about martial law. If any event happened, which would be beyond our control, ask yourself, do you have enough food supplies to last you and your family? Unfortunately, for most Americans, the answer is no. Please go to foodforliberty.com/Leahz, Leahz, and check out their food supplies. They have some of the best prices and reasonable prices on the market. Check them out today and order yours while there's still time. Again, that's foodforliberty.com/Leahz, Leahz. Waste no more time and get yours today. We're back, and first we're going to begin with Jeffrey Nyquist. Now, wait till you hear what these gentlemen discuss. As I previously stated, it's going to blow you away. I was literally in shock as I listened to the things that they revealed in this discussion. I urge you to share this message, to be prayerful and be ready, because prophecy is literally exploding all around us.
The thing that's happening now is that Russia is seriously preparing for war, both conventional war in Europe and a nuclear war with the United States. To give you an idea of what their preparations in Europe, they've had a huge military buildup, conventional military buildup in Western Russia that's very much concerning NATO. In fact, the German foreign minister recently made a statement saying that we are more in danger of a world war now than at any time during the Cold War. And more than 40% of Germans feel that war with Russia is very close. The Russians have also put together their tactical nuclear forces with their conventional forces to give them an overwhelming advantage. The Russian ambassador to Great Britain has bragged that Russia now is in the end game and can take Europe, basically, in a conventional war. On the nuclear front, you see the crisis in Syria, but you see Russia has been building new missiles, has been perfecting its missile system, constant exercises and launches, and is openly preparing its people for nuclear war with a rationing and sheltering. They had a drill about 2 weeks ago where they put 40 million people underground in shelters over a 4-day period. So these preparations are very serious. Doug, do you have any comments on that?
Just to reiterate that it's absolutely well documented. These are not issues that are open for debate. These are news items that are acknowledged by many sources. Yeah, it's very serious, and of course, why? People can ask a number of questions. Why is this happening now? And we have this election, a very bizarre election, in which in the last presidential debate, Hillary Clinton says Donald Trump is a Russian puppet, and Donald Trump said, "No, you're the puppet." Now, we've never had this in American politics before. The two leading candidates, each one is accusing the other one of being a Russian puppet. And will the real Russian puppet please stand up? There's a lot of evidence
that Hillary Clinton is the real Russian puppet. She's got connections with the Russians going way back. You've got this money laundering that John Podesta was involved in, that WorldNet Daily ran the news piece on. They laundered money from Putin-connected Russian oligarchs into Clinton-controlled bank accounts. This is a very serious thing. We don't have anything like that connecting Trump, by the way. We've got some figures around Trump who are Russian-connected, but nothing like this with the Clintons. When Clinton was Secretary of State, she set up situations where the Russians could get their hands on 20% of our uranium, where they had a huge technology transfer during the Russian reset early in Obama's first term. And Hillary Clinton said, quote unquote, "Our policy is to strengthen Russia." That's a direct quote of what Hillary Clinton said when she was Secretary of State. Now she's calling Mr. Trump a Russian stooge. This is a very interesting kind of deception and a very bold thing for her to do. And I think there's a reason for it. The Russians are also helping Hillary because they're pretending to support Trump. And don't get me wrong, the Russians would not give away. If the Russians were really supporting Trump, they wouldn't be getting Vladimir Zhirinovsky, the biggest clown in Russian politics, on Russian television to threaten America with nuclear war. They wouldn't do that. I mean, they're trying to blow poison kisses at Trump. That's what they're doing.
Well, it's really astonishing. For the first time in American political history, the two candidates have accused each other in a serious accusation of either being a Russian puppet or essentially a Russian agent. And those were not, they weren't making a joke. Those were serious accusations on a nationally televised debate. And Jeff, in the background, the American people are no doubt sort of shaking their heads at comments like that. You know, my sense is the American public does not take seriously the mobilization and the preparations for war that are occurring on the Russian side. And at the same time, in the background, the most recent FBI insider disclosures are absolutely alarming. Would this be a good point to perhaps just do a very brief summary of those disclosures? Yeah,
please, go ahead.
This information came out, perhaps a week ago, and this is from a high-level FBI source, and I'm quoting an executive summary of the information that was released online. The Hillary Clinton email server was merely a distraction from the massive corruption within the Clinton Foundation, and most of Washington, D.C. is in it up to their necks in what could become the biggest scandal of all time. This information comes from high-level sources within the FBI. The smoking gun is about to arrive, and there are a lot of people involved. There is enough evidence not being brought forth for Hillary and the entire government to be brought down. The real point of interest is the Clinton Foundation and not this issue with the email. The FBI received the server from Benghazi and found data on it implicating the Clinton Foundation into issues that are far worse than previously understood. There was super classified material on the Clinton server, the email server at her home. Hillary also had special access programs on her server, and a special access program is an intelligence program classified above top secret. These programs are supposed to be held on closed servers at secret locations only. The Clinton Foundation is a massive spider web of connections and money laundering, implicating hundreds of high-level people. Many high-level people in the government are involved, and in the opinion of this FBI source, are guilty of treason. Foreign powers have also received a number of these leaked documents, and Russia no doubt has received them as well. The leaks literally document that most of the high-level people in the current administration are involved in treason at the highest levels, and everyone is running for cover. The disclosure of the details of the special access programs also could jeopardize our national security.
Yeah,
if Trump wins, Hillary is going to jail. The entire government is corrupt. No one is clean. But the key focus is the Clinton Foundation. And these disclosures are. Is there any truth to this, Jeff?
Yeah, well, reading between the lines, I mean, why is Russia getting ready for nuclear war? And this thing comes out of the FBI. if they found treason in the government, and Hillary Clinton, part of her treason has been to strengthen Russia, and we know they've weakened the U.S. military, her and Obama, then that suggests that there is some kind of plot against the United States involving Russian agents, Russian money, and people with communist backgrounds here in the U.S. to basically overthrow our system, and that attempted overthrow is backed by Russian missiles. That's why the Russians are getting their missiles out now. That's the suggested thing. When I went to Washington a couple weeks ago, I met with various sources, and one of the things I was told, I was astonished to be told, was that a year ago, which is about when these investigations were beginning, a number of Democrats got together, and it was all about stopping Obama in a military crisis because Obama would not defend the country, and removing Obama using the 25th Amendment, using the fact that they could declare him mentally incompetent and replace him with the vice president. And I asked the person who told me this, I said, what would scare these Democrats so much would make them actually get involved in something like this, basically? And he wouldn't tell me. So now when this summary, which Benjamin has read of this anonymous FBI source, combined with everything we know about Russia's war preparations and Obama wanting to bomb Syria, where we have no national interest, to trigger that war and justify the Russians, you can see that the pieces of this puzzle fit together, that there's an attempt to take over the United States, and people at the FBI caught on a year ago, and they started flipping people in the federal government to stop Obama from betraying the country at the highest levels.
Jeff, I might jump in here and just make a comment because, to me, it strikes me I'm astounded by what we're saying because it's so different than what we've been hearing in terms of, from Hillary Clinton's perspective, Donald Trump, is this Russian agent, and the Russians are sort of feigning the possibility of nuclear war, saying that Hillary is the reason why, that they really want Donald Trump to win. And then on the other hand, you listen to the Mike Drudges and the Alex Joneses, and they're arguing that that Trump is the only way to forestall a nuclear war with Russia. That Hillary represents the globalists, the New World Order, and that if Trump doesn't make it into office, then there's going to be a nuclear war. And yet, what's really remarkable is the scenario that you're painting, which is coming from really two sources of insider information. One is the FBI memo that Benjamin read, and then the other are really some inside sources that you have, that you've been discussing these things with. You might go further in that and just talk about how this is such a contrast to the scenarios that have been kind of popularized. What you're discussing is really, it's novel, and it's really breathtaking.
Yeah, well, the world is involved in battles always with nation states. Nation states control armies. They control tax revenue. They control missiles and nuclear warheads. When you have a fight for control of the globe, it's a fight between nation states. It's one nation state overthrowing another one. The idea of capitalist interests and financial interests, that is a different kind of thing. Financial warfare and all that is a different level. But at the most basic level, as Chairman Mao said, political power comes out of the barrel of a gun. And if they can, for example, if the Russians can get their agents into the White House, into the Pentagon, into the CIA, and they can disarm us, take away our nuclear weapons, they own the planet. Doesn't matter what anybody, New World Order or whatever, says or does, those people are going to a gulag. And the Russians are going to say what is what. Because when it's 1945 and America has the bomb on Japan, Japan has to surrender. There's no other way. And the same thing would happen to America if they put us in that position. If you look at Barack Obama, he was mentored by a communist, Frank Marshall Davis, a communist who, in his FBI record, the FBI suggested that Davis was possibly a KGB agent. That's who mentored our president. Now, this is not talked about enough, but Barack Obama enters office, and what does he want to do? Zero nuclear option. He wants to get rid of all American nuclear weapons. He wants America to set an example. This is very, very sinister. When you put it together with... Yeah, exactly. When you put it together with what the evidence that we're seeing now is, why is Russia getting ready for nuclear war before the election? One of my sources suggested that it's a threat to the FBI. You are not taking down our people in your government, because if you do, we're going to nuke you.
Well, what's also alarming, and we're seeing reports that the Clinton Foundation just transferred $1.8 billion to a foreign central bank, a country where there's no extradition treaties with the U.S. I mean, what on earth is really happening? You've got the public being, deceived by the propaganda media, but in the background, the news reports are stories of dramatic Trump lead in the real polls, and that the New World Order candidates are running scared.
Yeah, well, they could be running scared from the FBI. If the FBI is flipping people because there's been a conspiracy against the government and Hillary Clinton and Obama are implicated, they would move money to Dubai, because they're going to flee there when the time comes. Because if they lose the election, they're going to go to jail, and the only way they can escape is to get away to another country.
I think that the real issue from my standpoint is it really the case that Trump actually is way ahead, and that the Democrats have been angling towards stealing the election through voting machine fraud, but for some reason they're getting cold feet. They feel like that they're not going to be able to pull it off, and that in effect, this is going to lead them to the scenario we're talking about, which is that they're going to flee the country. That's just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, well,
Incredible.
you've got the John Podesta email among the WikiLeaks saying that they were going to skew the polls. And of course, if you look at that, you go, why do they want to skew the polls? Because if they're going to cheat, they don't want the polls to be at variance with the actual outcome of the cheated election. And this. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, Benjamin, but that anonymous FBI report stated that Trump has been briefed on this. And that Trump's statements about cheating in the election are meant, I believe, to intimidate the cheaters. And he said, if I get elected, Hillary's going to jail. I mean, he's saying that. So this is very, very interesting.
Ben, I was wondering, you were sharing with us the other night about this incredible story from WebBots and their prediction. It might be appropriate to mention that to the listeners at this point.
I'm not sure everybody's familiar with the WebBots, but it's basically sort of a think tank that captures linguistic data from all over the web, and from literally this volume of information can discern trends in the direction of different issues in the public view. And one of the things they've recently identified is they're predicting a dramatic Trump victory, a landslide even, and that this will trigger potentially a financial collapse and possibly all the way to a civil war. And so, we've never seen anything like this election and the crises that are occurring in the background, from Russian mobilization and preparations for World War III to threats of a financial Armageddon following the outcome of a U.S. presidential election. It's simply unbelievable.
It's remarkable, really, that because the story that Jeff has inside information on is it's not a story that we would expect. For most Americans, the concept that there really are communists in the government, it's not one that most people assume that Marxist ideology is dead, that that all that stuff kind of died with Joseph McCarthy and so forth. But the reality, from what Jeff is saying, it's really very different than that.
Yeah, and of course we look at Hillary Clinton's background. I mean, Larry Nichols tells the story that when he first introduced Hillary Clinton when she was First Lady of Arkansas to a bunch of other businessmen and politicos, she was wearing a button that said "Proud Member of the Communist Party USA." And so we know that she was mentored by Saul Alinsky. They've even got letters between her and Alinsky. And Alinsky, of course, fought for the communist cause during his career. He was a guy that advanced Marxism.
And so, is the Communist Party alive and well in the United States? I mean, that's just it's something most people wouldn't expect.
Well, the Communist Party, there's two parts of it. The underground Communist Party is the dominant, controlling part of the party. It's probably also the largest part of the party. The actual open part of the party is kind of almost a kind of front. And by the way, the Communist Party USA supports Hillary for president. If you read their literature, they support her. They say she's basically right on all the issues. And there's been some bitter controversy within the Communist Party because of this. But it's curious. The Communist Party, I was at a meeting of communists in 1982 when I was getting a teaching credential years ago here in California. And it was one of my teachers, master teachers, was a communist. She invited me. I didn't know she was a communist. I didn't know it was a communist meeting. I went to it, and it was a speaker about how they were infiltrating the Democratic Party to take it over so that in the future they were going to elect a stealth communist president who was going to take over the country and change it into a communist state. And this was more than 30 years ago. I attended this meeting where this was explained. And this isn't like some secret. People who've been involved in communist meetings, Jimmy from Brooklyn, the famous radio Jimmy from Brooklyn, has been talking about this for years. He infiltrated communist groups in New York and the East Coast. This has been their strategy. Well, and they've made tremendous success of this plan. They have been able to put a communist in the White House. And we are gradually turning into a communist country. And now if Donald Trump is really ahead in the polls, he threatens to derail all of their success. Could that be one of the motivations for Russia's rapid mobilization for war? Absolutely. Absolutely could be. And of course, the fact that they're involved in, technically in our constitutional system, everybody swears an oath of allegiance to the Constitution of the United States. They don't have an oath of allegiance to the president or any official, but to the Constitution. And one of the things about Marxism is opposed to the Constitution. It's a bourgeois constitution, according to the Marxists. It must be overthrown. Therefore, any Marxist who is conspiring in a government position and has sworn an oath to the Constitution and is trying to overthrow it is committing treason, aside from, of course, breaking their oath. And that is a very serious thing, and I think that's what we have going on.
Jeff, you might explain more about the concept of, what the FBI might be doing. You mentioned the term flipping, and you mentioned, again, a surprise that it's the Democrats themselves that are worried that President Obama, if we were attacked suddenly, he would not step in to defend the country. Both of those, again, they really require, I think, more explanation. What really is happening from what you can tell?
Well, imagine the FBI. Okay, I'm going from what this anonymous FBI source says. Imagine that the FBI discovers this massive treason coming out of the Clinton Foundation implicating the White House and Hillary Clinton, and that goes into all the departments of the federal government, even goes in partly into the FBI, and imagine how daunting it would be to realize you have this massive treason, and that the FBI would have to go against the entire federal government. How do you approach that? Well, the way you do it is, of course, with careful investigation, you go to individuals and you flip them one at a time. You say, all right, we have evidence on you. We don't know we don't think you're as bad as the other ones. If you cooperate with us and work with us, we will not put you in jail. Or they might go to people and say, we think you're just being duped, you're innocent, but these people around you, do you realize what they're doing? and get them to then work with the FBI to secure the United States, to make sure that Obama and other people within the government do not betray the United States in a military crisis. And this would be the first thing that they would want to secure, would be to make sure that the country was protected, because if they found out that the puppet strings go back to Russia, and Russia is rearming and building tank armies and putting new missiles up and pushing out into the Middle East, grabbing. Hillary Clinton, the Secretary of State, and Obama made a complete mess out of the Middle East, and Russia and China are moving in. That's Russian and Chinese troops in Syria right now, and it's a joint intelligence headquarters in Baghdad with the Iranians and the Russians. In a kind of how do we end up paying $1 trillion for liberating Iraq, and the Iranians and Russians get it? This is what Trump has been pointing out recently.
Well, it kind of tells you something about the long-term strategy that Obama and Clinton have been using. Jeff, given that this is real, the FBI better move quickly, because isn't the window of greatest opportunity between the election and Inauguration Day, and particularly if Trump were to win this election, isn't that really the risk period?
Well, the reason the FBI wouldn't move immediately is because it takes, once they find out, they have to flip enough people to secure the government so that, the first risk is civil war. Imagine if communists were in control of parts of the government, they could say the FBI is committing treason. The FBI are the traitors. The FBI are the renegades. Go and arrest all of them and turn it around on them and concoct, how they can concoct almost anything. And then you have different parts of the government trying to arrest each other and actually shooting at each other. That's how civil wars begin. So the FBI, approaching this responsibly, would have to go to people, of course, and spend time getting its position, its ducks in a row, and, of course, disrupting the election, as this is an election year, would also disrupt the Constitution, because elections, the Constitution states when we have elections and how the election process goes ahead. So the real hope, I think the FBI is hoping that if Trump wins, it becomes much easier for them, because then they can work with him to clean it up. And these other people, a lot of them will probably flee the country. But if Trump doesn't win the election, it's a very, very difficult situation, because then the risk of civil war appears again, because they will try to cling to power and they will tell any number of lies to confuse people. I mean, that's why Hillary Clinton is accusing Trump of being a Russian puppet. It's throwing mud in the eye of the public. The public thinks, well, she can't be a Russian puppet. It's Trump who's the Russian puppet, right? And without unthinkingly listening to these messages that people are putting out, merely because Trump wants to work with Russia against ISIS, he's suddenly being painted this way. But she's not anti-Russian. She's only posturing to hide the fact that she's the ultimate Russian agent.
It's interesting, Ben. The other night you were talking about a book that you just read. I had a chance to look at it and read a bit of it, and actually the author is Jeff. It's someone that I think you consider a friend personally. You guys Ben, you might talk a bit about that book and describe it, because you brought it up when you mentioned the kind of the greatest time of vulnerability for the United States between the election and the inauguration, and you might speak to that.
Well, yeah, the book is The Long Sunday, from Election Day to the Inauguration, by Dr. Peter Vincent Pry, and he points out the fact that is the window of greatest vulnerability, particularly if we have a Trump victory. But in any case, the Obama presidency will be in its final chapter of lame duck status, and the new president will not have been sworn in, and much of the government is going to be on holiday between Thanksgiving and Christmas, or through the New Year. So, it is a point of maximum vulnerability, and the fact that the Russian Navy has basically been put to sea, and the communists are, for all practical purposes, mobilizing for an actual war, really should alarm the people that are paying attention in the West, but it appears nobody's taking any of this seriously.
Yeah, what's really interesting about this is that we have a situation where if it were happening in the 1980s, we would be all pretty scared. But it's happening right now, and it's like our officials are nobody's sounding an alarm. The president's not sounding an alarm. The Secretary of Defense, everybody's mum about it.
You know what struck me in the book was the very clear sort of steps or progression that that the enemies of the United States, which really Pry talks in terms of Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, that the steps that they would take. The first step really is the EMP attack, which we've talked about before in our writings and discussions, and the point that he makes, which is so strong, is that the EMP attack is the most devastating. It is the easiest to accomplish. It does not require a massive weapon, a weapon not much larger than the weapon that was detonated at Hiroshima, which was a 10 kiloton weapon. But if it was placed at the right position at the right altitude, it could knock out the grid virtually of the entire United States. And so he actually goes into some very specific scenarios of who might attack us, where might they place the detonation of this nuclear missile, and unbelievably to me is that all of this material really was assembled by a commission for Congress, which published its report in 2004, I think it was, and essentially no one has taken any actions in the United States to harden the grid, if you will, to protect us from this type of attack. Meanwhile, Iran, Russia, China, and others are very aware of this, and they have been developing specific technologies to protect themselves from this kind of in effect that they call it actually the ultimate cyber war, weapon. And so, we are asleep at the wheel. And Pry makes the point that this is really reflecting what happened right before World War II, when the U.S. was really at the sort of maximum state of isolationism. Our military was very weak. We were totally not ready for war. And then Ben, the fact that the Japanese attacked on a Sunday right around Christmas time, I mean, this just reinforces that very same point about the long Sunday, that is a time of maximum vulnerability.
Yeah, and it is a precursor. EMP is a precursor attack for a general war in which the United States is crippled. And Peter himself, Peter Pry, and Jim Woolsey, the former CIA director, have been working for years to get legislation passed. There's been two bills. The first one was killed in the Senate it never got out of committee in the Senate. It was passed by the House. The other bill has also been stalled. They can't get a bill passed to protect our electrical grid. And it's like, why? This is ridiculous. I mean, you talk about corruption leading to treason. There has to be some explanation. It's very inexpensive to protect the grid, and there's no reason not to do it.
Well, tonight's discussion has proved fascinating, if not incredible. And we've certainly got more that we could cover, but time doesn't permit. For the audience, thank you for tuning in. If you're interested in further details on the reality of the Russian and communist threat against our countries, the three of us, Jeff Nyquist, myself, Benjamin Brook, and Douglas Woodward, have published a book, The New Tactics of Global War, that go into the detail and the history, the reality of the threats faced by our great country. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Lynn, thank you for hosting tonight's program, and we look forward to coming back as soon as possible.